everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to live it to you, the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Balthazar.
And welcome to episode 250 of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast and episode 3 of the anniversary festivities. But this one is just a weekly recap, but a pretty good weekly recap for both recruiting news and, of course, the BatCats. But before we get into it, we want to thank the sponsor of the episode, and that is Greg Arthur. If you want to be read out as well as alongside Greg, please be sure to check out the official sponsors link in our podcast and Twitter bios. But let's dive straight into, we're going to start with basketball. We'll start with the new men's basketball commit, and that is the transfer big man from the other Wildcats, or maybe, depending on your perspective, the other Wildcats in Kentucky, and that is Ugonna Onyenso, which I am almost certainly butchering, but he was one of the most desired pieces left in the portal. He was sought after by teams like North Carolina, but K-State ends up swinging the recruitment in their favor. And this is sort of the pick that makes them one piece away from completing the roster, which works out because they have one scholarship left. But Connor, what do you have on him?
He is the rim protector that I think last year's team was missing at times. He has probably not as much athleticism as Jarrell Colbert, but he is very athletic. But he has the size of Will McNair, albeit a little bit slimmer. But Onyenso, I think, is going to step in and immediately be the starting five for K-State, and that's not a slight to David Gasson, but I think Dave has good special powers coming off the bench, and there's some stuff about Onyenso that is just pretty significant. For one, he's 7 feet tall, and he's still got a couple years of eligibility left. But the biggest thing to me is that this past season, he averaged almost 3 blocks per game, which is just ludicrous. I think that might be more than K-State averaged as a team per game. Onyenso, he had a up and down career with Kentucky. Although he did play in 27 games this past year, he averaged 3.4 points per game, just under 5 rebounds. And then, of course, that big block number at 3 per game. Really, really incredible stuff. And then in a game against Florida on February 1st of this year, he had 13 points and 16 rebounds in that game. And he also blocked 10 shots in a game against Ole Miss. So for the record, that is good.
Let the record show.
Yeah, and I think he's attempted 1 3 in his career. I've seen some highlight videos of him where he does practice some outside shooting. I don't think we'll be asking him to really do that much at all. If I had to guess outside shooting, he'll be similar to Will McNair in that we might just draw up a play for fun. Like if we ever play Kentucky, like we did with Will McNair when we played Providence, where he drills a 3 and he might make 4 all year at most. But that's asking a lot, honestly. The need from Ugonna Onyenso is a shot blocking ability, and he needs to be a rim runner, which is exactly what he is. He has similar rim running ability that David Gasson has, while being probably 4 inches taller and having probably 30 pounds on him, with longer arms as well. He's not quite as mobile laterally as David Gasson, but he's going to put back alley-oops. He's really, really good in transition. I can't remember the exact numbers on his points per possession in transition, but I do know he's in the 91st percentile in scoring in transition. Granted, smaller sample size, to be fair, but the fact he's 7 feet tall, 240-ish pounds, and that efficient in transition is something to write home about. But super athletic, really good shot blocker. I think this is the type of big that Jerome Tang has wanted. I think we were hoping Jarrell Colbert could be what Ugonna Onyenso is, but he just didn't really put on the weight in him, the frame for it. But this is a really great center pickup, and I think it's going to make people forget about missing out on like Cliff pretty quickly. Because I mean, I'm very, very happy with this get.
Yeah. I think it's also worth noting that you mentioned the nearly 3 blocks per game and the nearly 5 rebounds per game. He did that averaging 18 minutes.
Yeah.
So he was getting almost a block every 6 minutes he was on the floor.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous that he's able to do that. But he's super effective. So he's really good. I'm looking forward to seeing how it fits in with Jerome Tang's system, but I think he's a plug and play starter.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question about that. And I think the only piece missing is a wing now.
Yeah, that's the one spot left as a starting wing. And at that point, I think that's the sort of get that takes us from being a tournament team to like a surefire second weekend talent wise. I still think the current roster could make the second weekend, but I think we could really go for just one more scorer on the outside with some height. Because we have a lot of really tall guys and we have a lot of really short guys, but we don't have a lot of in between guys. So if we can get one wing that's kind of in that in between area, I'll be pretty happy about that. Remains to be seen. I know that the staff's in on Jameer Watkins and Coleman Hawkins. Those are the two names that have been flowing around social media. Both of those guys would be incredible gets and would take K-State to probably a preseason top 15 roster, if I'm being honest, and would also make next year's Big 12 maybe the best conference ever. Like it's going to be right up there with some of those like classic Big East seasons and some of the more recent Big 12 years. But I mean, especially with Dan Hurley potentially leaving UConn, that kind of leaves next year wide open.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that. And for those who aren't familiar, Dan Hurley may be the head coach at UConn. They're back-to-back national champions. He may be taking the Lakers job. That hasn't been announced yet, which if that happens, that's another domino for the portal because all of those players get 30 days to enter the transfer portal. So there's all of a sudden another crop of players that K-State could try and pick from.
Yeah, which that'd be fun. It'd be interesting at least.
I agree. I would enjoy it.
But that's the basketball portal. Now we can move into the football portal with the brand new defensive back commit for K-State from the transfer portal, the former Rice Owl and former CUSA all-freshman team and former all-CUSA pick. And that is Jordan Dunbar, who didn't play in 2023 due to injury. But before those 2 years, I mean, he was an all-CUSA pick. But his thing is he kind of has Echo Boydo syndrome, where he's just so close to everyone that no one throws his way, so he doesn't get picks, except for he just happens to get passes deflected on, I'm assuming, in zone coverage. He has 17 passes defense in his career. And this strikes me as probably CB 3 or 4, because you get Parrish 1, Garber's probably 2, which if you would have told me that 3 years ago, I would have thought that we were a 1-11 team. But
yeah,
he's probably slotting in either just in front of or just behind either Neelam or Donovan McIntosh. But yeah, I enjoy the Jordan Dunbar pickup. I think I'm interested in it. Oh, he's not CB3. That's Justice James. So he's probably CB4.
Maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, I like the pickup for depth purposes, and that's sort of what it is. I think he's going to be that third or fourth corner who comes in to sub out Garber, Parrish, or maybe follows not necessarily a slower receiver, but someone who's not going to be their number one guy.
Yeah. I like Dunbar a lot. And for what it's worth, we did forget, well, maybe I forgot to list Ugonna and Yenso's portal rankings, which granted are like kind of arbitrary. Uh, so take them with a grain of salt. He's a 4-star transfer on both On3 and 24/7. On3 has him as 46th nationally and the 7th best center available. 24/7 has him 160th nationally, 27th center available. So that goes to show the difference in evaluations for pretty much anybody that's not like a consensus like top 15. But Dunbar, on the other hand, he's an 86 3-star transfer on On3 and then 85 on 24/7. So just kind of like in that middle-ish area. Doesn't have a national ranking, but doesn't really need one. But I like Dunbar. I like that he played early and often at Rice and was all freshman Kusa, all conference as a sophomore. Then he misses last year, redshirting. So we get him for 2 more seasons, at least one. But I like that pickup because we have in the past experienced, like shaky corner depth. And when that happens, things can get dicey really fast. If you lose your number 1 or number 2 guy. And this year, I guess we're just saying we don't want to roll the dice on, like 2 out of Garber, Justice James, and Parrish getting injured and not knowing what we have behind them. I think that there's guys like Nigel Thomas and McIntosh and now Jordan Dunbar that can fill in pretty well. But Dunbar is more of a known commodity, and he's a security blanket, insurance policy, whatever you want to call him. But he's also probably good enough to see the field regardless. And he'll be up there fighting for minutes because we have a very, very talented secondary. This is one of the deepest secondaries that K-State's ever had, at least in my lifetime. Because I think we're truly 2 deep everywhere. And at some positions, we're probably close to 3 deep. But I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now. I imagine Jordan Dunbar, with his experience, might be a guy that even gets cross-trained a little bit. Maybe I pick up a little bit of safety knowledge just as like a backup. Like we seem to like our corner to free. So I think there's a chance that we could maybe see him take a couple spot snaps there just to get him on the field if he's really that talented. But I mean, this is shaping up to be a really good roster. And I think that puts us really close to the scholarship limit now as well.
Yeah, I think we're, upon last checking, we're like maybe 2 or 3 short of 85.
I think so. Yeah, like
that'll probably be filled with walk-on scholarships.
I would bet. Like I bet Knuth will get one. Hecht will probably get one, and then somebody else, maybe Bo Palmer if he hasn't got one already.
I think he already has one.
Oh, well then not him, but it'll be somebody else.
Yeah, maybe they move Ty Bowman up to full scholarship instead of NIL.
Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, I wish that they would publicize stuff like that. I get why they don't, because it's like not really advantageous, like at all, like for any reason. But I get it, I guess.
Yeah. But now on the other side of football news, we have the schedule release for the non-conference game, including Arizona, which, yes, is technically a non-con game. Yes, it is confusing. But if I'm remembering correctly, it's 6 p.m., 11 a.m., and Friday kickoff at 5.
Very close.
Okay.
The first game against UT Martin is a 6 p.m. kick on Big 12 Now, which is what we do every year. That first game, we just get our select game against an FCS team, and then we just pick a late time so we aren't burning to death in the heat like for the entire game. That'll be on Big 12 now. Next week is at Tulane, and that's going to be at 11 a.m. So you're right there as well. That's going to be on either ESPN or ESPN2. So we are guaranteed a network spot. Not going to be put on the streaming back burner no matter what for that first week. And then the last game is that Friday game against Arizona. It's a Friday the 13th. As a matter of fact, on Fox at 7 p.m. against Arizona. So that's going to be a massive, massive game against Arizona, particularly because it's going to play like a conference game, even though it's not a conference game, and it's maybe the last thing that we need. But regardless, it's going to be a big one. And I'm really excited to see that. I'm glad to take a big time network spot, a primetime spot as well.
Yeah, all of those are, well, other than UT Martin, because it's UT Martin, all those are premium time spots for K-State, which I kind of think speaks to the perception of K-State this year, where they're willing to sort of put K-State on the map. And that's no disrespect to Tulane or Arizona either, because Friday night Power 5 games aren't particularly common, especially that early in the season. But I also think it's interesting that, I don't know about UT Martin, but 2 of our 3 non-con games for sure are going to be up against new head coaches at their given schools, because Willie Fritz is gone and Jed Fish.
Yeah, Jed Fish.
Jed Fish has gone to Washington. So it'll be interesting to see, like, because those 2 teams are kind of massive unknowns, except for Noah Fafita, who is pretty universally considered good, because, spoilers, Noah Fafita is good.
Yeah. It's a really quality team. I am somewhat worried about it, but not at the point where I'm super duper worried about it. And another thing that's interesting, though, is Kelly Ford. He's a analytics guy that he does some preseason stuff every year, just some fun projections. And you got K-State. And right now he's got K-State favored in every single game that they play. And K-State also has the 6th easiest regular season schedule in all of Power 4. And this was what really got me, was that K-State is more likely to go undefeated than to miss a bowl game this year, according to the numbers. And the numbers don't lie.
I don't like numbers. We've established this.
That is true. Yes, you do not like numbers. However, the numbers work in our favor here.
So I like these numbers, actually.
Yes.
Samoa Joe, the numbers don't lie, and they smell disaster for you at Sacrifice. But that's a deep pull. But yeah, I'm really excited for football season. I know everyone is. We're getting to that time of year. But we also have a little bit to talk about in terms of postseason baseball, and that is the now SuperCats, and that is the BatCats who advanced to the Super Regional to go up against Virginia. But for how they got there, well, they swept their regional in Fayetteville by facing every single team at least once, including massacring Louisiana Tech and beating handily SEMO. This was the first weekend in quite some time where it seemed like complimentary baseball was being played by the BatCats, and my goodness, was it beautiful.
This was, I think, probably the first weekend. Yeah, I think you put it well. The BatCats, this was their best weekend, start to finish, in a very long time. This was definitely their most focused weekend in a long time. And I think what really made this weekend pan out was that the pitching was good always. There was not really a weak link pitching-wise throughout the entire weekend. And starting Tyrul on Sunday was a kind of a big gamble from our perspective. But if we do go back in time, Pete Hughes at his pre-regionals press conference did talk about Tyrell throwing his two best bullpens of the entire season just before they left for regionals. So the precedent was there that they believed in Tyrell, and he came in and started and threw a really good game against SEMO. He didn't spend a ton of time out there because he's not pitched a lot this year, but it was by far the best he's looked all year. It just wasn't particularly close. It was a different Tyrell than we've seen the entire season.
Yeah. And that's in the third game against SEMO, which was the sort of the ceiling one. But we can start off with the victory up against Louisiana Tech, or as they go by, the Diamond Dogs, which I can't lie, that's an elite name. That's elite. Not only is it a David Bowie reference, but it's also a Metal Gear Solid reference, and I love both of those things. Granted, never mind, that's a rabbit hole. But the K-State Cats end up winning 19-4 in a game that was never really in doubt at any point in the game. And Connor, I'll let you take the offensive numbers here. So, I can rest my voice for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, to begin with, the big story out of this game was, other than the final score, the fact that at 11:35 p.m., this game was postponed. After starting at 8:06, it was postponed in the sixth inning, I believe.
Yeah.
And then was restarted the next day at 11. And so it was kind of a big question how that was going to go. In case they came out, I think in the first at-bat they had, they jacked a home run.
Yep, Jason Parsons.
And not only continued to play really well, they put their foot on the accelerator, and they were playing even better than they were the day prior. But I'll go through here and go down the list, really, because pretty much everybody had a good day. Brendan Jones, he goes 1 for 4, but scores 3 runs, walked twice. Jaden Parsons, very, very quietly, went 4 for 5 with 4 RBIs and scored 4 runs because he was overshadowed by the next guy in the lineup, and that's Kalen Culpepper, who went 4 for 5 with 4 runs, 4 RBIs, and he hits for the cycle. It was the first cycle hit by a K-State player since Ross Kibbitt in 2014. So pretty incredible stuff. To not just, I mean, it's already really difficult to do that, but to do it in the NCAA tournament is pretty special and really memorable. And I don't remember the exact order, but he topped it off with a home run. So he got the triple out of the way and decided to finish his cycle with a home run. So have a day, Kalen Culpepper. Have a weekend, really, Kalen Culpepper.
Have a day and a half?
Yeah, day and a half. He really had a day and a half. Brady Day, he went 2 for 5, 3 RBIs, drew a walk, scored a run. Nick English went 1 for 3 with an RBI, drew a walk. Caden Carl, he pinch hit, defensive subbed for Nick English. He went 0 for 1. David Bishop went 1 for 5 and scored a run. Lobliner was a defensive sub and went 0 for 1. Caden Phillips, he DH'd. He was the only starter to not record a hit in this one. So he went 0 for 4. Kyan Lotus pinch hit for him. It went 1 for 1 and scored a run and drew a walk. And then after that, Rafael Pelletier went 1 for 4, drew a walk, scored a couple of runs, had an RBI. And then Chuck Ingram, who's a guy that we've been pretty hard on. He snapped out of his slump, which is something that we talked about on this show, to be fair, is that maybe a mental reset is what he needed. And that was absolutely true. That is exactly what Chuck Ingram needed, because he went 3 for 5 with 5 RBIs and scored 2 runs. He jacked a pair of homers in this game. So pretty incredible way to break out of a slump for Chuck Ingram, because he was hitting like 8 for 70 going into that, or 8 for his last 70 going into this weekend. Then jacking 2 home runs in one game in the postseason, no less. Just really, really, really impressive. This is a game that would have been a run rule if it wasn't the NCAA tournament, but for those games, you have to play all 9. K-State scored in every inning but the 3rd, 4th, and 9th. They put up 5 in the 2nd and 5 in the 8th. They just utterly dominated this game. At one point, the game after the 5th inning was 9-4. And then K-State ended the game with 10 unanswered runs. So pretty incredible stuff. I don't even know what else to say other than this is probably the best offensive game of the season for K-State. They were, I think it was 1 run and 1 hit off of their postseason records for most in a game. So major kudos for getting out there in the first game and just making a statement.
Yeah. And the pitching did pretty well as well. Owen Borma going 4 1/3, 4 earned, 6 walks, and 6 strikeouts. A lot of those were towards the back end. He started the game really, really well. And then no other earned runs allowed. Cole Weisenbaker going 2/3, only giving up 2 hits. And then Blake Dean and Josh Wintrub each going 2. Dean giving up 1 walk, but with a strikeout, and Wintrub giving up 1 hit with 2 strikeouts. All in all, really efficient. And they shut it down after Borma's 4 1/3. And really that's what they needed, was a game to basically tell LA Tech, like, sit down, shut up. We know you're the higher seed, but we don't care.
Yeah, the thing with the pitching in this game was that Louisiana Tech, they really didn't have an answer for Owen Borma in terms of hitting his stuff. It was just Owen Borma just walking a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Louisiana Tech only got 2 hits off of him. So if Borma had been able to control a little better, he probably goes a little longer on this game, but it didn't really matter at the end.
Yeah. And then the big game of the weekend was K-State up against Arkansas, which, fun fact, K-State was actually considered to be the home team, which if I consider that to be a little bit jank, especially considering the fact that this was this was Arkansas's field. That's a little jank, but they get double advantage. But K-State ends up walking away victorious 7-6, and you get to cover the pitching for this one, which is great because it was a pitcher's duel for quite some time. But K-State was going up against, in my opinion, the best pitcher in the country, and that is Hagen Smith. And we got to him. We got him for a 6 spot, which does not happen. I think he had allowed either 10 or 13 runs the entire season before facing K-State, and we got him at a 6 spot.
Yeah, it was something crazy like that. And he also had not given up a home run since March before this game.
And then came Kalen Culpepper. But in terms of offensive numbers, Brendan Jones goes 1 for 4 with an RBI. And Jaden Parsons 0 for 3 with an RBI. Kalen Culpepper has 1 for 4, but has the most impactful hit of the game by a 3-run home run into that 6-run inning, which really gave K-State all the momentum. Brady Day goes 1 for 4. Nick English goes 1 for 3 with the second most important hit of the game, with a solo home run to give K-State an insurance run, which they ended up needing. And that's also a bonus because he has the exceptionally rare baseball stuffing of the stat sheet. Then Caden Carl came in as a defensive sub. Daniel Rivera was the DH for a little while. He ended up taking an offer but had a run off of a walk. Kyle Lotus then a pinch hit for him, going 0 for 2. David Bishop goes 0 for 2 with a walk and a strikeout. Rafael Pelletier going 0 for 2, and then Chuck Ingram going 1 for 2 with a walk. So you don't have a lot of notable 2-hit performances. In fact, there's not a single K-State player that had more than 1 hit. But all of the hits were massively impactful and came in insanely high leverage situations.
Yeah, you put it well. K-State, they only had 5 hits in this game, and they only drew 4 walks. So it was a quieter day at the plate, but they pooled their hits. They hit when it mattered, which is something that K-State hasn't been able to do super well this year. but they did a great job. And get this, they left only two runners on base in this game. They left 8 on in the Louisiana Tech game, but that's because everybody was getting on base, so that hardly counts. But
Yeah.
in this game, leaving only 2 guys on base, I mean, that was absolutely necessary for K-State to pull out this victory. We stranded 13 Arkansas batters in this one. And because Arkansas threatened a lot, and it seemed like the pitching got even better when we got into those high leverage situations.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, you have the pitching.
And Jackson Wentworth, he gets the start, and he gets credited with the victory in this one. He went 5 2/3, so just a third of an inning off of the quality start. He gives up 7 hits in this one, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, and a wild pitch for 93 pitches. So a quality outing for Wentworth. And then Tyson Neighbors came in and got his 9th save of the year. Went 3 1/3, 67 pitches, and this one was his longest outing of his K-State career, and it was the biggest one by far. Gave up 6 hits, gave up 4 earned runs, walked 1, hit a batter, got 5 strikeouts, including a massive strikeout to end the game. But every single time it looked like he was about to crack, he locked in and came back even stronger. And it was a performance for the ages from Tyson Neighbors, who it was the ultimate Tyson Neighbors outing. I think there's no outing that will ever match this for his career at K-State, where he continually created his own adverse situations and then navigated them expertly. So it was pretty incredible stuff. It was really great to watch him deal in this game, and he was just fantastic in this one. A massive hat tip to Tyson Neighbors in this game. And then as well, Kalen Culper for the massive home run against one of the best pitchers in the nation.
Yeah. This was, for all intents and purposes, it's one of those rare baseball games that I would go back and watch, not live, because it was a classic game. Like it had a little bit of everything. You had pitchers duel throughout the first 4 1/3, and then it sort of, leveled out to really solid offensive performances. And it's not one that I would go back to if I was an Arkansas fan, but I'm also not attracted to any of my cousins. So maybe it's for the best that it's not for them. But this was an all-time classic game, and it made the next win all the sweeter for K-State to end up sweeping the regional, which, by the way, shout out SEMO. I have no ill will towards them. Thank you for eliminating Arkansas, and I'm sorry that we had to do what we did to you. But K-State ends up winning their game up against SEMO to advance to the Super Regionals, end up winning that 7-2, and the 2 runs came in the second to last inning in the 8th, and then K-State calmed down and ended up winning the game to advance to the Super Regional in Charlottesville up against Virginia. But Connor, you have the offensive numbers here, and you have a lot of really good performances to pick from.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I want to mention is that K-State had 12 hits in this one, and I'm pretty sure every single one of them was a single.
Yep, there's not a single extra base hit.
Yeah, pretty incredible stuff for K-State. This was the ultimate station-to-station game because we saw a mix of power and small ball throughout the weekend from K-State, and this one was just poke singles, over and over and over again, and it was just death by 1,000 cuts to SEMO. But yeah, there were a lot of really great performances in this one. Brendan Jones leading off had one of the better stat lines of the day, 3 for 5 with 3 RBI. He, I think, started 3 for 3 in this one. I think he obliterated the first pitch on like the hardest hit single of all time.
Yeah.
He was all over their pitchers to start the game, was Brendan Jones. Jaden Parsons went 0 for 4. Kalen Culpepper went 2 for 3 and drew a couple of walks. I think he was intentionally walked as well in this one. It was either this one or the Arkansas game, but um, Brady Day, he kind of had a rough time over 5 in this one. He was making contact, just wasn't getting where it needed to. Nick English went over 2, but still scored 2 runs off of being walked twice. So pretty good day for him. Chuck Ingram going 3 for 4, scoring 2 runs. David Bishop went 2 for 4, scored 2 runs, got 2 RBI. Daniel Rivera, 1 for 4, scored a run, got an RBI as well. Rafael Pelletier, he went 1 for 4 with an RBI too. So stolen bases for Brendan Jones, Chuck Ingram, and David Bishop. Jaden Parsons got hit by a pitch at one point, but this was a very Pete Hughesy day for the BatCats, which really this whole weekend was kind of like the like end game for Pete Ball. I think.
Yeah, Pete Ball. Yeah, I agree. This was sort of, yeah, I couldn't have put it any better. This was the end game for Pete Hughes baseball. Like, this is, if Pete Hughes could have his perfect game, this would be the game. Like, this weekend would be those games. But in terms of pitching performances, Ty Rule came back after being on the shelf for a pretty significant part of the season due to injury, and he was great. He goes 4 innings, only 2 hits, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. His spin rate on his slider is back, and that's probably the best possible thing for him, because when he was hurt, he had no control of the slider, plus it was flat, which is a very, very, very bad combination, especially when you're a 4-seam pitcher who throws straight fastballs as opposed to sinkers. But yeah, Ty Rule, this was a massive comeback game for him, and he looked comfortable. He didn't look like the moment was too big, and he ends up getting pulled after 4 innings because, you know, it was his time. And then Cole Weisenbaker comes in relief, goes 3 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, 1 hit by pitch. And then the back end of the game was 1 inning by Blake Dean and JJ Slack. Blake Dean ends up going 1 inning, 3 hits, 2 earned, 2 walks, 1 strikeout. And then JJ Slack comes into the game in the last inning to close the door and ends up getting 1 strikeout. That's his only registered stat, but maybe he should have, batter's face should maybe be backflips instead, because he pulled probably the cleanest backflip in K-State baseball history.
Yeah, it was pretty great to see ending kind of slam the door shut when Dean started to struggle a little bit there at the end. But it was great that we were able to save Slack for the very end, because we didn't have to use him that whole weekend up until those last 3 outs. And we didn't really, in the grand scheme of things, have to use a ton of pitchers weekend either. I think we really optimized our pitchers really well in this one, where they should all be pretty fresh going into next week. But man, I'm super pleased. This is just the second time K-State's ever made the Super Regionals, and this team's finally playing the way that we thought they could.
Yeah, and their next matchup, we'll give a little mini preview for Virginia. That's their Super Regional opponent. So K-State just needs to win 2 games, and they're in Omaha. That's what's on the line. Omahattan is on the line here. But Virginia is no slouch. I think I talked to Connor about this. My team comp for them is Oklahoma State, a team that we took 2 of 3 up against this year, because their pitching is just kind of okay. In fact, their pitching has like a 0.3 higher ERA than us, but they also have maybe a little over half the strikeouts we have. So their pitching staff is fine, but where they're going to get you is their bats. And that's very similar to the Oklahoma State scouting report for the past, 5 years.
Yeah.
Where they're a deadly offensive team, but their pitching is where you can get them. So to me, the top goal here has to be very similar to how you faced Hagen Smith. You be patient and you let the pitching make mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's what we have to do. And this is going to be a battle of whose pitchers can survive the longest. And I think that we have two really great starters right now, which I'm pretty happy with Wentworth and Borima. So in a perfect world, we're able to get at least 6 innings out of both of them and then survive the bullpen. That needs to be the goal. But I mean, yeah, we need to win two. So let's just win 2 quick ones and get out of there. Not have to stay for the if necessary game on Sunday. But I mean, regardless, I think at this point you have to call this season a success, given that this is K-State's only been in this position one other time in its entire history as a baseball program. So, Pete Hughes is now on a very short list of K-State baseball coaches. It's him and Brad Hill. Those are the guys that have been able to do this. And it's pretty impressive the way that this team has been able to come together here at the end of the season.
Yeah, and I agree. It would be best to just win the first 2 because, yes, Ty Rule had an amazing performance up against SEMO. I am unsure how our day 3 starters would stack up to theirs, mostly because, I believe in Ty Rule, especially in clutch situations because he's always shown up for those. But I would prefer to just get it knocked out with Borima and Wentworth if possible. Because those are guaranteed to be favorable matchups for K-State in terms of pitching. No one that Virginia has matches up quite to Borima and Wentworth. Definitely not Wentworth as a day 2 guy. Yeah, that's it. That's all we really got. You have any final notes?
Watch the BatCats this weekend. If they play 3 games, they're all going to be on ESPNU.
I agree. I agree with that sentiment. The sentiment of Go Cats, that is.
And if you're not going to BatCats, or if you're not going to watch the BatCats, make sure you're at the K-State night for the Royals on Friday.
Which we will be.
Yes.
But thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdward00.
I am at Connor Baltazar, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store or supporters link, both listed in our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.